We're going to start a new series on the $6 Million Man, which was as I remembered it, a television show from my youth. And I didn't realize at the time that the first season of that television show was actually 2-part episodes that had been made from TV movies, 3 TV movies that had been broadcast the year before. And because of the success of those TV movies, they brought this to series with Lee Majors. So we watched the original television movie the other day. It was entitled at the time The $6 Million Man. When they brought it to the television show, they broke it into a 2-part episode called The Moon in the Desert. But this was what started the whole thing off. It was based on the Martin Caidin novel CYBORG, which I've read, and this one follows it pretty well. And you know, it's an older property, and I hadn't remembered those TV movies or those original episodes, whichever way you want to look at it. I don't remember those. I remember the later $6 Million Man with the sound effects and the slow motion running and all the tropes that became part of it. And when you played $6 Million Man, we called him the Bionic Man, in fact. When you played the Bionic Man on the playground, that's what you did. You ran in slow motion, and you made the sound effect with your arm as you reached out. So that's what I remember, but this was very different. This was a more grounded, realistic approach to the subject. And
this is the first movie. I did like this one. I think it was definitely different. I think that I liked all of what had happened. I was upset for the $6 Million Man.
Right. Steve Austin. You were upset when, as an astronaut, when the lifting body crashed and he was injured.
But I do like the first one. I think it's not one of my favorite movies, but I do like it.
It's a much slower pace. And again, the series is how I remember the show. I don't remember these movies as a kid. This is the first time I've watched it since being a kid, if I even watched it when I was a kid. I seem to recollect the later seasons of the show and more of those dynamics. Like I said, the pieces that we all remember, like, you know, when he would use the bionic eye and they would use the sound effect. They don't even use the bionic eye at all in this movie. And when he's using the arm, you know, he's using it like a hammer. He bangs with it. He doesn't use the strength of it necessarily.
Right.
We don't see him do the jumps that we saw him, that you haven't seen it, but you will see him do in later episodes. Very different, but at the same time, I found it enjoyable. It moves very slow, but I like Martin Balsam as Rudy Wells. Darren McGavin is in here, sort of in a role that Oscar will become Oscar Goldman in a way. It's a different role. It's definitely a different character, and they don't try to make Richard Anderson into the same character in later episodes, but it's that same kind of position above Steve Austin as the head of that organization. Slower moving, very different. I can see why it was successful at the time, but much harder to watch when you have the memories of the show as being faster moving, and I kind of set it up for you that way, unfortunately. I said, oh, this is great, he does all these things, and then we watched the movie, it was a lot slower moving.
I think that I don't like a lot of slower moving things, but this one I gave a try. I liked it, but I didn't like it. I like space, so like seeing all the ships, the spaceships.
Yeah,
and
they
stuff.
use a lot of actual footage of the astronaut program and different things that, you know, the rocket ships taking off, and even the lifting body. The crash, Steve Austin's crash, is an actual filmed, you know, crash of a lifting body. The gentleman flying that lifting body survived. But it must have been terrible every week if you tuned into this show to have to watch that over and over again, or at least for his family. But yeah, I mean, there's some cool footage in it. Lee Majors is a really good leading man in here. He reminds me a lot of Gil Gerard. We've talked about this before, and Buck Rogers is one of your favorites. Interestingly, there was a time during the series where he was having a contract issue and he was going to leave the series. And the two actors that they talked about replacing him with were Gil Gerard and Harrison Ford. So Buck Rogers and Han Solo. Yeah, it was kind of neat. But overall, I mean, for me, it was enjoyable, but very, very different than how I remembered the $6 Million Man. For you?
Well, I haven't seen any of the series. I think that it's good, but I think it could be maybe better. Of course, I'm watching this now and not when it was made.
Right,
So it was
and so
probably
you've
better when
you've
it
seen
was
things that are based on this, in fact, but they have the pacing and the special effects and the writing of today, which it's a lot faster. Things develop a lot quicker, and they used to let things breathe a lot longer and take time with it. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, but you have to adjust your expectations and watch it.
Because you get so used to this
Yes.
other, and then when you watch something like this, I feel like you would think it's okay, but you're not into it.
And all I can tell you is at the time we loved it. So, I mean, it's just the fact of how things are made today and how we view things today and what our attention span is today versus how they were made back then. Now, the next two films were produced by Glenn Larson, and he's the one that does Buck Rogers, Battlestar Galactica, Magnum PI, a lot of my favorites. So it'll be interesting to see how those progress, or if I even remember them, because the next two, 4 episodes are based on 2 more telefilms, and they were produced by Glenn Larson, whereas this one wasn't. So we'll have to see what they look like. All right, anything else on this particular movie?
No, I don't think so.
All right, last take.
I'm gonna give it a in-between, a see it and a skip it. I think you should maybe try it, but I don't think you're gonna get real into it.
Right. For me, it was not the $6 Million Man I remembered, or more appropriately, the Bionic Man that I remembered. However, as a movie on its own, judging it on its own, I still give it a see it, because I still think it was unique, and based on the Cyborg novel, it's a pretty cool story. So I'll give it that. So for me, it's a see it. All right. We'll be back with the next one pretty soon.